Nylon is a family of synthetic polymers characterized by amide linkages, typically connecting aliphatic or semi-aromatic groups. What that means in English is that as thermoplastics, nylons can be melt processed into diverse shapes. Because of this, these nylon polymers have extensive commercial applications, including uses in textiles, fibers such as apparel, flooring, rubber reinforcement, also molded components for automotive and electrical equipment, and what do you know? Firearms. Let's take a look. Mill Serp Garage. Remington Nylon 66. This is a 22 long rifle chambered semi-automatic buttstock 14 round tube magazine fed rifle made from 1959 through 1989, with a trickle that came out from Remington still being produced from the factory till about 91 with leftover parts. But manufacturing, from my information, stopped in 89. They made over 1 million of these things. Amazing. So these things have a barrel just short of 20 inches long and a weight of 4 pounds, believe it or not. Yep, that nylon stuff is light. Light, compact. This became a very popular rimfire rifles, and in its circles, it was known for its reliability and accuracy up against, a lot of monsters back from 59 to 89. There were a lot of 22 monsters out there, from Marlin, Ruger, Browning. I mean, everybody, right? And these things, they held their own. So the name chosen for this rifle, we got a bunch of topics to cover here besides just 22 rifles this time. So the name was chosen. It's not just some trendy nickname. It is actually the name of the plastic material it's made of. And while we're not new to plastic stocks here at the Millsarp Garage, as we have featured more than one tenite stocked example, this is a whole different animal. For a long time, I didn't even realize just how different, because it's not just a steel receiver dropped on plastic furniture, that would replace the wood, let's say. It is an injection molded assembly that functions as the stock and the receiver. It's crazy. But before we take a closer look inside, let's cover some background info on this nylon material and how Remington created a whole model line with it. So, nylon was the first commercially successful synthetic thermoplastic polymer. So, throughout this description, you could look up some stuff to these keywords, because I don't want to get too involved in the chemistry. Thermoplastic is an important word right there. It was thermoplastic research that back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, when they started to be able to actually do really cool things with plastics, when you could melt them and form them. And that's kind of like what the thermoplastic thing was. So DuPont began its research, this research project, on this material in 1927. That's how long ago, okay? The first nylon 66, was synthesized on February 28th, 1935 by Wallace Hume Carruthers at DuPont's research facility at the DuPont Experimental Station. So patent number US 21300523, which was applied for on January 2nd, 1935, was granted on September 20th, 1938 to Wallace Carruthers and assigned to DuPont in Delaware. Now, DuPont had acquired a controlling interest in Remington in 1933 when Remington's management offered DuPont a controlling 60% stake in the company, mostly due to financial pressures from the Great Depression. But who knows, like, how the company was being run back then and what was going on. You can do a little further research there of what happened in 1933 when DuPont slid in the door. So this is how Nylon 66 and Remington rifles were brought together. And if you want to take a closer look of exactly what Nylon 66 was and really dig into the chemistry of it, Wikipedia has a really cool page on the actual look at that, on the actual making of it, the applications, and you can find stuff online like this that really explain what it's all about chemically. We're going to delve into some rifles now that Remington, what did Remington do with this stuff? So first we're going to look at the Remington Nylon family. Remington came up with a family of rifles. Right now, the Nylon 66 here on the table, that was the first one. That was the initial launch in 1959. This guy right here, just in case I forget to bring it up later on, I'm really proud of this guy. Finding this one. For me, I've passed by a million of these things and just, they are always too expensive or beat up, or I just could never really move into one of these until just recently. And I was really lucky enough to find a 1959 model. This was the initial launch right here. So they were made through, like I said, 1991. They were sold by Remington, but really 89 was when they supposedly stopped. These were the Nylon 66. They were all semi-auto, tube magazine in the buttstock. There was also, I'm going to list them all here for you now, okay? There was a Nylon 10. Now, the collectors are going to kill me because, I mean, I have this information, but there's always, you know how it is when there's a complex series of something and then there's experts. They're going to be like, well, that's not necessarily true because they made 4 of them that were, you know, that kind of thing. But for our general purposes, I know I'm going to get yelled at in the comments, but for our purposes, here is the Nylon family. The Nylon 10 was a single shot bolt action. These are made from 62 to 64. 8,600 of these were made. There was a Nylon 10 SB that was a smooth bore made for 22 shot. These are pretty rare. If you see one of those out there, the collectors would go nuts. The Nylon 11 was a bolt action box mag. 22,400 made. They were made from 62 to 64. Now, these had a steel receiver. These bolt actions, I think the single shot too, these bolt actions that I'm mentioning, okay, these did not have this entirely nylon receiver that we're going to take a look at. That certain special thing is not there. These bolt action ones, and I believe every other one except the semi-autos did have a conventional steel receiver with just the nylon wood. I guess Remington hedged their bets because even the whole series being made on those receivers, or maybe beating up the bolt. A bolt action, you really can beat up on the bolt. Maybe they weren't holding up if they tried to make them all nylon. Who knows? Be interesting to speak to somebody on the Remington design team from back then and find out. So that was the 11 and the 12. Again, another bolt action. This was an underbarrel tube mag this time. 27,500 made from 62 to 64. Again, a traditional steel receiver. Nylon 76. This was a short throw lever action. It was called the Trail Rider. 25,312 made from 62 to 64. There were 1,615 of those made in Apache Black. Now, here's a really interesting thing. We're just in the middle of some discussion on some wacky nylon 22 made by Remington, who had a some weird one with low numbers made as a lever action just thrown in there, right? With a weird name like Trail Rider. Here's the claim to fame for that rifle. It is the only lever action rifle produced in Remington's name ever. Just that one. The 25,312 made, or the 1615 made black ones, that's it. That's Remington's entire fleet of lever action rifles. I couldn't believe that when I read it. I had to pour through books, and it's true. These are highly prized. And if they're not, they should be. Nylon 77. They just keep going on, don't they? This is a semi-auto box mag, 5-round box mag version of the 66. These are made from 1970 to 1971. 15,000 of these made. There was a Mohawk 10C. This was identical to the Nylon 77, but with a 10-round box mag. 129,000 made from 71 to 78. And the Apache 77. These were made for Kmart. There's a Kmart store brand made by Remington for Kmart sales. From 87 to 89, not a long run. They were a 10-round box mag. These had a stock that was reminiscent of the Seneca Green, which we're going to talk about when we get into the Nylon 66 specifically. There were 54,000 of those made. The fact that they were Seneca Green colored is very significant. Well, I guess while we're here, let's just move right into, that's it. That's all I got. So now the collectors could go nuts talking about other weird nondescript models that might have been in there. I want to hear that information. Believe me, I'm not condemning you. It's I need you. I need you in the comments to, amend my rudimentary list here. But let's move into the Nylon 66 family now, because that family alone has its own stuff. The Nylon 66 MB, that is the most common rifle. That is my model right here. MB stands for Mohawk Brown. That was what this color was. 675,000 made from 59 to 91, the whole run. Now, they had tried other things to try to make a premier model and this model or that model, so that they were like, oh, this is going to be the premier, the popular one, the granddaddy, the deluxe, all kinds of stuff they did try, but it never, they never were able to beat the sales and the popularity of their original Mohawk Brown release. This was the one everybody wanted. Something about it just fell right into a niche that just, it was perfect. It was one of their perfect releases. And all these years later, with the worry over the nylon and the plastic receiver and all that, still awesome. What a move by Remington. Somebody over there deserves, a raise. Deserved a raise, let's say. All right. That was the MB, Mohawk Brown. There was a Nylon 66 SG. This was a short run SG stood for Seneca Green. There was about 45,000 of these made from 59 to 62, and then they were discontinued because it seemed like that color wasn't popular. Now that became the most collectible one. Everybody seems at gun shows that all you'll hear is people talk about it. It became like a talking point. Everybody knows to look out for the green ones. I don't know who's going to pay more money for it just because it's green. That just the the nylon 66 nerds. That's it. But yeah, just so you know. And then there's a little story. We'll get to it later. There's a little side story. Again, I'm mentioning the green again, like I was about the Kmart one. Hint, hint. We'll get to that a little later, though. I don't want to complicate things. Nylon 66 AB. That's Apache Black. They were Apache Black. They had the white diamond insert, like you see this guy has right here, the inserts. Chromed barrel and receiver cover. We'll get to what I mean by receiver cover in a minute. The production of these was from 61 to 91. 220,000 sold. They thought this was going to be the one that runs away with it, but nope. For practical purposes like hunting and stuff like that, to be shiny like that, chromed, I don't know. They were wrong. It didn't beat out the so-called standard brown one. Everyone loved the brown. Nylon 66 GS. That stood for Gallery Special. These were chambered in 22 short only, with only 16,400 made. You'd think that would be the one that the collectors are going nuts for. No, I mean, they are. They are collectible, of course, because of the low numbers, but you won't hear people at gun shows going like, is it a Gallery Special Nylon 66? It's just something about that green thing. Everybody knows about that. Nylon 66 BD. That was a black stock, all black, no white diamonds. It was just black. Barrel and receiver cover were black. And about 56,000 of these were made from 78 to 90. That sounds slick. Sinister looking one, There were a couple of anniversary models. This is just so that the collectors don't kill me. The Nylon 66 150th anniversary model, 1966. This was made. 3,792 of them were made. There was a logo on the receiver for 150th Remington anniversary. Nylon 66, a bicentennial model, came out in 1976. The 1776 to 1976 bicentennial nylon. 10,268 of them were made, again with a bicentennial logo. So in total, 1,050,350 nylon 66s made. So let's talk a little bit more just about what this nylon 66 stuff was and why it worked out so well for firearms, being that it's a plastic. So nylon 66, it is a high-performance synthetic polymer. It is a type of polyamide made by combining two chemicals. Here we go. Hexamethylenediamine and adipic acid. I think I did good. The 66 in the name refers to the 6 carbon atoms in each of these two monomers. Okay, remember that. Don't forget, because you will be tested later. The Nylon 66 series of rifles was made from that series called Nylon 66, but it was called Zytel 101. So it was like a type of Nylon 66. And you'd have to get into like real crazy chemistry stuff to understand how that's even being broken down even more. But technically, it is the Zytel 101 branch of the Nylon 66 material. And DuPont developed that. The Zytel 101 was developed exclusively for these rifles. So you would guess that that development was for wear resistance. You can imagine that that's where they really turned it up, right? So these rifles were advertised with this type of material. There, the big advertising cues were lightweight, waterproof, essentially unbreakable. They wouldn't warp, crack, chip, fade, or peel. This is what they were telling everyone. They were right. These attributes were accurate, but the rifles were also excessively flexible. It resulted in a rifle that was too light, so that although intrinsic accuracy was good, practical accuracy in the field suffered. In other words, that if you just benched it and it was just sitting there and it was just on sandbags and you're pulling the trigger, accuracy was really good. But if you really get out there in the field and you're standing or you're in a weird position and you're torquing it, so you could kind of feel that if you grab this thing like this and you, just by the way it's made, if you move it, there might have been a little bit of flexing going on. Obviously, the barrel isn't bending, so you don't have to worry about, like, the bullet not traveling through the barrel because it's bent. Just talking about its rigidity. You'd bed a rifle into the stock, and that would have something to do with its accuracy. Well, if you're bedding it into something that's more flexible than the wood, you can imagine that that could affect its accuracy, and that's kind of what happened. So you have to be conscious of that and not really manhandle it all that much, is what I'm saying. Not for a durability standpoint, just from an accuracy standpoint. If it's something, a weird aspect you wouldn't have to worry about with wood, let's say, So, unlike the Savage 10-ite guns that preceded it, the receiver is actually made of nylon with the bolt running on self-lubricating, in quotes, nylon rails. A slip-over blued sheet steel cover was used to give the receiver a more normal appearance. They were afraid they could have just left it to show that it was, even the receiver was just the plastic, but they were afraid to do that. They actually covered it with a shroud to make it appear metal. Interesting, right? It concealed stock reinforcing bolts that are in here. We're going to take a look in a minute, but that's part of what it did too. But they could have covered that up in a different way. But there were a pair of reinforcing machine screws and nuts in here. The structural nylon stock was injection molded in two halves that are mated together. That's why it needed those bolts to hold the two halves together, to literally hold the thing together. And also, the behind these diamonds, this is like like something they put on here that's pretty, but if you pop these out, or you look in there, there's another bolt, nut and bolt here holding this together, these two halves that it's split down the whole length of the rifle. So even here, there's something holding it together. Whereas this isn't really, it's holding it together, but it's not like crazy structural. The ones that are here are holding the whole receiver together, where the round is firing and the action cycling and everything. You know what I mean? Pretty wild, right? And what's also bugged out? So the trigger guard is nylon. The trigger itself is nylon. The bolt handle, nylon. They really had some serious integrity in this material, huh? They went all in with this thing, right? They shoved the bolt, of course, is a machine steel forging, and most internal parts were fabricated from steel stampings. The ejector, the trigger mechanism, the sear, the striker, the firing pin, you know what I mean? But the limitations of this nylon material are definitely there. It's not like you could make an entire rifle out of it, because there's some people that think that because they know the receiver is, they're like, oh, that whole thing is plastic. It's not. Obviously, you can't do that. So the list price for these things in 1959 were $50. A lot of the popularity was that in 1969, these things cost $50. They were $49.95 when they came out in 1959, and they stayed that way for 10 years. They did not go up a penny. It's another part of the popularity, and that 10 years later, they actually did really hold up, because Remington, before these things came out, I'm telling you, these guys, they did testing for like 10 years. They did such extensive testing. There are stories that there were hundreds of thousands of rounds were fired. And they did so much testing that they found some really interesting stuff with it, that it had a very high cyclic rate of fire and that it had a tremendous durability, despite the plastic construction. It was more durable than even they thought it was going to be. And there was like some, I remember when I was young in the Guinness Book of World Records, there was some guy that shot like, I don't know, like 100,000 wooden blocks and missed like 6 of them. Some crazy story like that, like the best shooter ever. And he used this rifle to pull that off. And I don't think they did it necessarily with that rifle necessarily for the accuracy. I think when you're going for a record like that, you just need a rifle that's reliable. It's going to function consistently. It's going to fire the same, and it's not going to misfire or screw up or break. I think that it was picked for its reliability, to be honest with you. I think that's why they used that rifle. So let's do a breakdown here, and finally, after chemistry class, let's get back into actual rifle here. Let's do a breakdown and a reassembly. We haven't really dug into doing something like that in a long time on this channel. Let's really take a close look. I'm going to settle in here. I'm going to make sure my camera's in the right spot. All I need is one bit for this guy, but it's a fat one. So we busted out our gunsmithing set, and we don't want to chew up any of these. These screw heads here are beautiful. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to do I'm going to break this guy. And I'm going to break this guy. You got to remember, you're holding together plastic here. You're not like screwing together steel. So both of these screws go into let's get rid of this guy. Thank you, Mayachi, my little hand sack. They screw into here. Oh, you know what? I don't even think I have this in my info, but I'll tell you. I did get this guy for a good price. These are usually very expensive because of the collectibility. I think we'll touch on that a little later, but the guy, somebody electro-penciled a social security number into it, and I didn't really care all that much about it, but I made that like such an important aspect in the sale. I thought about that and said, I don't know, and I got it for a decent price, like kind of crying about that, but I don't really care that that's there, to be honest with you. It can be it's with electro penciling, it kind of rises it up. I could probably sand it down and re-blue it, buff it out mostly, put a new cover on. I think it's just, to me, it's just part of its life. Some dude did that. Some dude did that to it, and it's got like a tattoo. So cover, bolt handle, and am I missing anything? No. And then that just comes right off. Oh, and what fell out over here? Don't get worried if that happens to you. So I'm just going to put that back in because we'll get to it in a minute. There's the receiver cover. And before I forget to mention, the sight is pretty cool on here, right? It has this adjuster here for elevation, and it had another wheel here for windage, and it's missing. Now, I think this is an early model. Again, this is the first year. They had a wheel here like this one, and I think they were all breaking off. Everyone was going to turn this and breaking them off. So what they did was they made this, you could see this is kind of like a screw, and the other threaded part is kind of like just lines in the steel that pull the threaded part back and forth. If that makes any sense. Um, they made this like a set screw. So in here, they would be like, you could use a little teeny screwdriver and you're just turning just like it would look like a set screw. And it didn't have that big wheel on the top anymore. You had to actually use a screwdriver. They changed it to that because these were breaking off. Now, somebody had turned it where the sight was moved all the way this way and then it broke off. And that's how I got it. So what I did was I lifted it up with screwdrivers stuck underneath here and wooden dowels to not scratch it as best I could. And I just moved it over and dropped it back down dead center. And it seems to be lined up pretty good. I cannot adjust the windage on here. And I could fix it, of course, but since it kind of ended up not needing a windage adjustment, being dead center, I'm just kind of leaving it that way. So that's the receiver cover. And here, just this dropped into the nylon material on the side, just dropped in like that, is the extractor. The rounds get caught right on the edge right there. Look at how that's designed with that taper and that little edge right there. Pretty cool, right? So that's just the little, they needed a little piece of metal right here. They needed metal. When that round was pulled out by the bolt, it couldn't hit a piece of nylon. It could, but it would wear it right out probably pretty quick. So they realized that they just needed a piece of steel right there. So they basically just made a 90-degree bend in a piece of steel that stuck out as far as it needs to stick out and made a hole here and just drop that right in and go, there you go. That locates all they really need out of this piece is just that much that's sticking past my fingernails right there to just catch on the edge of the rim of the round to chuck it out of the rifle. And that's all that's for. And there you go. That's your extractor. So where do you go from here? There is one bolt down here. Seems conventional. Usually you lift the whole action up out of. Oh, and here, this is kind of cool. So that when the bolt rides, let's put the bolt handle back in for just a second so we can take a look at that. How the bolt rides through. Oh, can we do that? Where's it? I'm sorry, I'm putting it in the wrong spot. So yeah, see how the bolt rides? This rides along the top right here, just as kind of like a cartridge guide. So it feeds the next one in, it hits that. Pretty cool. They needed that. This is a important part of this design right here. Interesting, right? So it doesn't just lift the whole action and everything up out of the wood or out of the, because there's no receiver like that. I don't know. It's weird. It is definitely designed differently. So this screw is a little bit different. You have one of these. I'm going to show you. Oh, geez, I bumped you. Sorry. An easy way to do this is you unscrew this just a bit. And what that does is it gives you a little bit of room here. This is what it's attached to. And you get to bump that up a little bit. See how everything just slid forward right there? And then you'll be able to get the barrel out. And there you go. How simple is that? Nice. Look how nice the receiver is. Yeah, the breech. Not a single dent of a firing pin hit. Beautiful. Somebody took care of this guy really nice. Patent pending. 22 long rifle only. And there's our date. There's our 1959 date. What is it again? KF. K for the BLACK POWDER part to come up with the month. And F is 1959. Then there's a U, I think, right? That's a inspector's mark. FU. That's nice. And yeah, nice Killer front sight on there, huh? So that's the barrel. Now, here we see those. Here's what holds the stock together there. There's supposedly two of them. There's the other one back here. One here, one here. This is holding everything all together right here. Boom. Nice and solid. You also have sleeves. I've heard people that take these apart say you got to be careful because see how there's like a sleeve here? So you have to watch it because supposedly they could loosen up and slide out. There's other pins too. So mine seems to hold its way together, but just you got to be careful when you slide that cover off. It's best to be straight up and down. You pick it up, see, like I wasn't, and see how the extractor, the ejector fell out. So you probably want to slide it directly up and then just watch carefully to make sure that you see where something falls out of if it does. And get a screwdriver, don't go nuts, but these two, just bump them a little bit. Just make sure they're snug. You don't want to, you will break this plastic if you gorilla these. It doesn't need to be held together that way. You could feel it. If you turn it and you go, oh yeah, that's a little too loose, you just kind of turn it till it doesn't want to go anymore. You don't turn it until you can't turn it anymore. That's crazy. You could turn a screw pretty tight that way. You just want to make sure they're snug. If you turn it and they're already snug, leave them alone. You don't have to make them any tighter if they're good. And then where are we now? This thing that was holding the barrel here, you could push it back down again now, and that'll pop your screw out again. You screw it out the rest of the way, and then you'll be able to just lift this right out. This is just kind of like the metal that has to hold the barrel in place. You had to use steel for that too. So they just minimalistically, you know, came up with whatever steel parts they needed and figured out how to fit them into the plastic. Wild, right? Really wild. Now the bolt. The bolt comes out like that. I just keep it together like this is an assembly. There's a, this is the, I'm not going to get the nomenclature right, I realize now. So I'm just going to describe it. This is definitely the spring that controls the spring action of the bolt, the reciprocating action, right? And there's a guide for that spring that fit inside here, inside the bolt. I don't take the bolt apart. You'd have to pound out pins. There's roll pins in here or whatever. There's a pin here that's bent to stay in place. I'm not messing around. But here's the firing pin right there. The extractor claw, clean out in there. Spray it nice. Gun scrub the crap out of this thing. Air blow it dry. Whatever. I wouldn't take it apart unless you absolutely had to. Now this gets interesting. And if I didn't have to tell you, when you take it apart, you might want to put the safety on. Safety's back here. You might want to put it on just so that you don't accidentally hit the trigger, because you can see this is charged right here. So once you start taking it apart, I mean, this is charged and it's ready to go. So little caveat right there. Be careful. I'm going to take up the slack on it and I'm going to pull the trigger so I can slowly release this now. And this is like, I don't know, what do you call it? Striker, hammerless, strikery thing. There's a guide in the spring, boys. My nomenclature is getting worse and worse. And this is like the sear down there. Take a look at what that looks like. We're going to see that later in the when we get into patents. See that? Take a mental snapshot of exactly what that looks like in there. But yeah, that releases this. This shoots forward, hits the firing pin hits the round. Bang. Awesome, right? And we did all of that without taking out the magazine tube, which is nice. Has a plastic follower. Works really good though. But it's other than that, just what you'd expect from like the late 50s into the 60s. It's an awesome tube. And there we go. We're there. This right now that's in my hands weighs nothing. But you can see again, there needs to be metal parts for the feeding of the rounds, the the tube that tube slides into, the sear trigger mechanism. The safety switch itself is plastic, but I'm sure there's some parts in there for the safety system that have to be made out of metal. And that's about it. Other than that, we're all nylon, baby. So now reassembly. This is the fun part. It's not that it's hard, but it's just different. There's a couple little interesting things that you have to do here. So we get this back in the rails again, and back in its little rabbit hole here. Boof, get in there. Let's go. Are we on camera? We got to make sure we're on camera. The worst thing is to be off camera, because I hate that when I'm watching somebody do something on YouTube and I find myself tilting my head to be able to see what he's doing because it went off camera. You got to get this kind of like all the way up to kind of like this area right here. Even further. We have to go even further. All right. We're going to get a wooden dowel here. We're going to get it ready. So I know it's dark. We got to do something with our lighting, but we need to be able to press the sear down to be able to charge this when we're pulling the trigger. So to get this on camera now, it's going to be near impossible. Let's see if we can do this. I'll lift this up a little bit. Let's get this. It's getting hung up. We need to get it up higher. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to see if I could do it this way. Yeah, this will be easier for me because now I got my dominant hand doing the dominant part. Can this possibly be upside down? No, it's the right way. Let's start again. I don't know why that feels weird. All right, let's get in here now. This has to go. It seems to be stopping right there when I know it needs to go further. It's not to the point yet where the trigger needs to be pulled. So why is it hanging up right there? What could I have done? It has to go in further than that. I moved something. Oh, could it be that? Okay. I see what I did. There isn't a rifle in the world that won't embarrass you on a YouTube video. And my buddy, he was like, don't take that thing apart. And I was like, I did already. I took it apart and put it back together. Who are you talking to? That's one of my favorite channel subscribers, Mr. Krumke. You have to pull the trigger. Oh, okay. So I'm going to have to explain it. I know my hands were in the way. So with like a wooden dowel, you just have to press down. I thought you just had to press on the sear, but apparently when I was doing it the other times, I was also pressing down on the part that's in front of it. You have to be able to pull the trigger as you're holding the trigger back. Use a dowel like this to press down on the sear. You'll make clearance for this piece to go behind it, and then it will just click into place. Ugh. If I tell you that took like 2 seconds every other time except for that time. So let's see, how should we do the rest? Let's do the rest the way we took it apart. Let's go, which was this way, I guess. So let's go, bolt goes, spring goes in there. Bolt slides right back in here. Nice. And Remember this guy? I think it doesn't matter which way it goes. Push it down, but not all the way, just enough to hold the bolt right there, but maybe enough to get this screw started. And then, oh, we didn't put the extractor back in. We want to make the ejector. Sorry, we want to make sure that that makes it in there. We'll forget. So it's in the way of the bolt right now. So we'll leave it out for now. Don't let me forget that. Then the barrel. We get the barrel started way back here, not with the sight part. We definitely want the receiver part in there. And we get that in here. Right there. And boom. That's what holds it in. That's what holds the barrel in there. Boom. Then we tighten this guy. And again, just snug. Although it's going into metal, you don't really pay attention to what it's screwing into as much as you pay attention to what is it bearing on. And it's bearing on the base of this nylon hole right here. That's what you'd crack. You'd tighten this and split this right down the middle. So don't go nuts. It stops right about there. It's just kind of like where it doesn't want to go any further. And then you just make it go a little bit further. That's the stretch that you're putting it into it is just right there. You just need a bump like that. That's it. Now this will go in. And then the receiver cover. Another interesting piece of non-compliance here that all of a sudden this doesn't want to drop in. Oh, what was in there? Oh, maybe this wasn't in there right. Sorry. What on earth? The receiver cover. Ooh, a pin fell out. A pin fell out. Just what I was talking about. One came from here. Let's take a close look. It came out of the safety. What holds the safety in. All right. I see where that goes. Let me see. I told you about those pins. And it was going so well. Okay, then we gotta hold this down. I gotta get that in there. I think a better way to do it is to just hold it down with this. How on earth did that pop out of there? All right. Is that it? I think that's it. Does it go further in? Or does it stop right there? I think it's got to go a little further in. Or maybe it stops right there. Let me see if I could get the spring down a little further. Well, here's what happens when we do these disassemblies on film. No, that's as far as it goes in. I think that's it. Let's see if the cover goes on. Cover goes on. Safety's good. Let's take it off one more time. That pin fell out. That fell out. I'm gonna have to take a look on film to see what it looked like when I was taking it apart, but I'm pretty sure it looked like that. So we're good. That ain't gonna move with the cover on. This cover's never coming off again. 2 screws. Woof. It's a close one. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. And screws. Let's just do them by hand. Just till we get to the point of snugness. Don't let it fall apart when you take it apart, because you will be blowing your mind up, wondering where all those parts go that end up on the bench. Again, don't go nuts. No gorilla tightening. Snug. That's it. Nice. Safety's working. Okay. And magazine tube. Boom. We did it. Where are we at? An hour. All right. Let's talk about patents. The designers. First, we have Carruthers patent from 1938. I need some coffee. Oh, yeah. Carruthers patent from 1938 for nylon 66, the plastic. It is interesting to see a patent for a change here, right? That isn't on a physical working mechanism. Like, there's no diagrams on this patent. It's written in the language of chemistry. And I really dug reading this thing. I don't know what the hell they're talking about, but it was interesting. What is the patent? Where is the number? It is 2130523. That is assigned to DuPont. Next up, and I have to talk about this one, even though it's from 56, so this is a little interesting. It was filed for in 51, right? So this is a patent by George Sullivan. It way predates this rifle and its design. It's US 2753642 from, again, 1951, granted 56. This patented the process of injection molding a plastic rifle stock with no mention of the actual receiver usage. Okay, so this, this it wasn't assigned to any specific manufacturer. I included here just as an area for further research. Might be like the patent, that started off the the tenite revolution, back in the day. Although I think even Savages were even earlier than that. But I just felt like I'd include it because of a possible connection. But the actual designers, there are 3 listed for this rifle. And I have 3 patents here for you. So one is by Charles Morse and Wayne Leake, 3023527. This patent is for a firearm having receiver-bearing surfaces of synthetic resinous material. Bang. There you go. This is the patent for this rifle, basically. And let's take a look through. There's the cross bolts. There's the bolt that... Should I do it on here? I'll do it right here, like live with you. And instead of just showing it, I can't really point. Here's the cross bolts, right? Here's that screw that went straight up through the middle. Here's the safety pin that we almost lost. And then, it's showing, showing how it's put together. Watch, what's most interesting. I want to show you this. Check this out. Oh, it's not on this one. And it shows the complete receiver construction through how the mechanism, and the bolt and all that rides through it. This is all showing, these cross sectionals are all showing how the rails are constructed. See it? It shows the diameters. If you read the text of it, it breaks that down and talks about just that, how those rails are constructed, stuff like that. Next up, Charles Morse and Homer Young with US 3003274 from 1961 for the cartridge feed system. This one's pretty wild, and you could tell that it's for this rifle even just because the sight. Look at that, you can see that it's the sight. I mean, it was for this rifle. Here's the cartridge feed system. Even that is a specialized design just for this guy because of the, see, there's that follower, that exactly the same shaped follower. And here's that piece that folded down across the top. Remember that hinged piece that was the cartridge guide? There it is. It all mattered. It's all in here. These are all assigned to Remington too, of course. Last but not least, another by Homer Young, US 3027811. It also seems pertinent, detailing a firearm control mechanism. And here's what's interesting. I was looking at this one going like, is this part of the same rifle? I'm like, there's design cues, definitely. Then when I got here, I was like, oh, fire control, reciprocating bolt. Yeah, there's that sear. This is with the bolt gone, and that's the sear. Look at it. That's exactly what we were looking at. The piece we were just messing with that we couldn't get in. Young, blame Young. Don't blame me that I couldn't put the rifle together. Blame this guy. And there's his safety with the pin. There it is right there. That it is supposed to stick out like that. There it is. Oh, man. These patents. I see patents in my sleep. We've been looking at patents, at design patents here for years. And I can't think of any other design that was as different, as revolutionary, as much a departure from the norm as this design. The fact that Remington took a chance on a plastic receiver shows how much research and development went into this design. This was a huge departure from the norm, and it was bound to make a loyal fan base because of that. The collectibility factor of these nylon series rifles is off the chart. This is one of those examples where there are entire collections that people have of just this model, the Nylon 66, or collections consisting of just nylon series rifles. There's also collections like that. And for this reason, there's a lot of info online for research on these. So here's some tidbits I found. I like to give you these little tidbits. There's just tons of information. So some of the information I found is for dating these or cataloging them. And while the KF barrel date can be decoded using, Black Powder X, this chart right here, as May of 59, there's still some interesting traits to these because they're made before serial numbers came into effect and during when serial numbers came into effect. So there's some interesting things during the transition I thought I'd point out in case you have one of these and you're wondering why it's different. So they added serial numbers to these in 1967 even though 1968 is when they were mandatory. They jumped the gun there. So serial numbers for 1967 ran from 410,000 to 419,011. And for 1968, the numbers ran from 419,012 to 473,710. These 67 to 68 serial numbers now were located on the bottom of the barrel, about 3 inches back from the muzzle. So now I think they were, this was a transition where they had to figure out what to do. Where are you putting the serial number? And they were like, well, the receiver is technically plastic. And I think there was a rule that the serial number could not be in a plastic material. It had to be into steel. And they wanted it in steel. They wanted it on the receiver. Remington was like, well, the receiver is plastic, so we're going to have to go with the barrel. And they just did it that way in 67. It wasn't mandatory in 67. In 68, they did it that way. And I think the government was like, not the barrel. Barrels could be swapped out. You saw how easy it was to take the barrel out. So in 68, the government was just like, listen, feds were like, just put it on the receiver. And Remington was like, okay, if you say so. And they put it on what is really just a stamped metal receiver cover. It's not really the receiver, but the federal government was like, that's the receiver. That's what they did. They moved it over to that receiver cover. Another interesting collectibility thing now is this Seneca green stuff. So let me explain what was going on there. The Seneca green color was available at release in 59, but they were discontinued in 63 because either a lack of popularity or the high degree of popularity for the Mohawk Brown. Only 45,000 Seneca green were made compared to 675,000 of the Mohawk Brown, and they were early ones too. So they're not so easy to find. And word gets around, people hear that bit of info, and so now they look for these. They became the collectible, like I said, they're the ones collectors are always talking about. So for this reason, I'm going to give you a heads up that can save you some embarrassment, because now you'll be at a gun show, you'll see one of these, it'll be green, you'll grab it, you'll think you found it, you'll get home, and then you'll get some information and you'll hate me because you'll say, you told me the green ones were. Listen, there's a thing. From 87 to 89, remember the Apache 77, the Kmart guy? The one Remington made as the store brand for Kmart? Well, it was a box mag equipped. Okay, so they're easily identifiable. You can't just like scrub the numbers and put like you could put like a cap on the pistol grip cap that says nylon 66 and try to get over it. No, because it's like totally set up different. It was a box mag equipped. It had no white spacers. It had a black diamond set into the far end, not white. These were also green in color. They fooled many excited gun rack raiding collectors into thinking they found the highly sought after Seneca green nylon 66 model, which they did not. And you want to know the amazing thing? There were 54,783 Apache 77s made, right? Almost the same number as the Seneca green. So go figure. Collectibility is so weird. You would say like, oh, well, yeah, they made millions of the Apache 77, so that's why they're not as they're fooled and they're not as collectible. Same number. It's basically the same number. So look at all this material available for these things now. I'm just going to show you a bunch of stuff that I just fall into online. There's a nylon 66 like club right here with just tons of information on these. What's interesting mostly is these pages on collectibility that, like I said, the nerd thing, they break down every single little possible. Woof! They really get detailed. I mean, look at that. Look at this. These charts. with every possible breakdown and the percentages over the of the price, like how much they would be worth more than the others. It's like there's a whole commodity exchange on these things, right? And then here you find stuff like this on all the different models. They break them down with there's some interesting ad stuff here. Here's the lever action guy. Ooh, got a squirrel. And here's some information. This is where I got some information on the Seneca Green thing. Tons of information. Go ahead. Go use the internet, AI, go crazy. There is certainly enough information for you. Look at this. Ooh, geez, I almost broke it. Look at this beauty. So there's no screws back here for the butt plate. It's all molded in. It says Remington. The spacer. It's amazing how much this looks like wood, right? It has like a design, like kind of like where the parting line would be so that you don't see a line. You know what I mean? So they put like a design there. See that? It's interesting, right? The nylon 66 cap there. The checkering, since it's, basically injection molded, they don't have to worry about being impressed checkering. So it's actually real checkering. And it's sharp. And it'll stay that way because it's this durable material. Snappy bolt sound. We're not sacrificing anything here. Interesting how this is relieved here. I like that. The black piece on the end here, kind of schnabled. It's like a little bit of a schnabel. Nice crown. Sights are nice on this guy. Beautiful. So, we're running long again. What are you going to do? It's been a while. I haven't been with you guys in a while. I kind of, things got nutty, so had to do life for a while. So you deserve a hour plus long video. But there's only one thing left. Shooting it. This is one of those rifles that is a pleasure to shoot. You run into them once in a while. The mag loads easy. The tube closes into the rifle easy. Chambering is smooth. The action is lightning fast. The trigger feels nice. The brass doesn't hit you in the eye. You don't even have to clean up the brass at the range because it throws it forwards. You know what I mean? It's like just everything about it is an absolute pleasure. And while it's true that the light weight might affect the handling in the field, sitting here at the range, it feels great. It's so nice to be light like that and pointable. It's like no fatigue. You know what I mean? Some of these 22s weigh a lot. They're like, it's not, that feel is nice too. Those heavy barrel guns, and it's nice, but this is nice. This is a nice departure. I went through a couple of 100 rounds. It didn't fail to feed or extract once. Okay, maybe once. I don't need there to be like one time when I went to chamber in this video and I needed to chamber it again, and then you yell at me. Maybe once. But rumor has it loves high velocity rounds, and I was using standard velocity. So even if it was choking on them a little bit, it would be understandable. But it was still essentially flawless. But this thing supposedly loves high velocity. I think you could just do stingers in this guy all day. I always hate to recommend stingers in any 22 because those things are destructive. Stingers they're like over the top. It's almost like nobody designed a 22 rifle, like the all steel revolvers and everything like that. Yeah, okay. But anything that's like semi-auto that has to cycle a blowback action, man, those things blow back. You know what I mean? So, but this thing, it has like this two-stage design. Like it goes to here, and then it pushes. It has that, like it pushes further like that. You know what I mean? So, stingers, maybe okay. Maybe okay to blast away all day with stingers. But I'm not recommending it. I can never recommend it. I'll give you some advice though. Stick to CCI no matter what. I mean, even if it ain't stingers, stick to CCI. I'll tell you why. CCI is cleaner than most ammo, by far. And keeping the nylon bearing surfaces clean of grit on this rifle is probably a good idea. If I was one of the 3 designers, I'd probably tell you that over a beer. But you're not going to see it in any of Remington's literature. But it's easy enough to take down and clean. And when you clean it, wipe out those rails. They say not to oil it. So, yeah, but I don't know. It's up to you. Part of this material is its lubricant resistance or chemical resistance in general. Definitely avoid soaking it in like hoppies and stuff. Definitely not. Keep astringents away from this stuff. You could just wipe it down, you know. A little like something inert, like ballistol isn't even a petroleum product. So use ballistol. I use ballistol exclusively, but since it's not a petroleum product, you don't have to worry about that reaction between petroleum products and plastic. But they say you don't have to lube it. But you work with yours how you think you should, but I would keep it clean no matter what, especially if you don't oil it. And I would clean it a lot if I did oil it, because the oil would hold some of the dirt and the grit. So either way, clean it a lot. Every time you shoot, when you take it apart, just take that cover off and just wipe out the rails. You know what I mean? So in closing, I gotta tell you, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I can imagine buying another nylon model if something interesting came my way, but the collectability factor also brings the pucker factor when it comes to price tags. Sometimes it is amazing what guys ask for these. I've seen prices 4 digits and up on pristine examples or rare examples. Like I said, I was at a small show. I mean, look at this. Look at this show. This is a small show. I was in the corner when I took this picture. The show was small. There weren't many people there. There were a lot of guys that just wanted to just pay for their tables by selling a few things before they got out of there. So I was in a really good position to get this rifle from this guy for a good price. And then the electro penciling thing on it. I was just like, listen, I want one of these. I understand the collectability factor, but we're pretty far apart. This is the best I could do. He might have given me an offer that was higher than what I was asking, but then, we kind of met. We met in the middle, but more towards my middle is what I'm saying. I got a good price on it. But it is, I mean, you're paying a lot for the collectability, and it's got a guy's social security number electro penciled into it. So that is going to affect collectability. That's going to affect the price. It just has to. But for me, I didn't care. So that's why I offered that money and didn't mind paying for it. A lot of collectors wouldn't pay $5 for one that had that on it, or they'd say, well, for parts. Like I couldn't imagine parting this thing. It's beautiful. So it's got a tattoo, and that's all there is to it. So you all stay well, keep shooting, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.